Hello, we're Saturday Live Talk. I'm Lydia Stomina, and today is our 87 podcast. Imagine that. We started back in 2020. We had wonderful guests, and we are having them. And today we have Kayla Minion. Hi, Kayla.
Hi.
It is a pleasure and an honor to have you, especially with the topic that is called Live Your Best Life. Wow, that is something. I welcome our podcast co-host, Candy Sheehan, and Scott Kiddle. Hi, Candy. Hi, Scott. And I know that you are as excited as I am to learn about how to live best life. I would rather hear, usually people say, live your life best. But Kayla, you said, live your best life. So please introduce yourself and tell us why is this title.
Well, my name is Kayla Minion, and I am a certified personal trainer, yoga instructor, and nutritionist and life coach. And so living your best life is so important to me because I think often we just get trapped in the mundane reality of life, kind of just going and trucking through everything versus really seizing the day and enjoying life and being in the present moment. So I think that is so critical to really finding that enjoyment in life. I mean, we only have one life, so why not truly, truly enjoy it?
Very good statement. Thank you. But why iron body? Why so much attention to the body when people have all kind of interests? So why did you pay attention to the body? And you are also called transformation and well-being coach. So that I'm sure covers much more than just the body. Could you share about that?
100%. So iron body is your entire being and your body are all kind of linked together. Our thoughts are linked to how our body feels. How we nourish our body is linked to how our body feels. And our body moves us through every single day. I, at the age of 19, was a pedestrian hit by a car. And I wasn't really into health and fitness at the time. And so I needed to do that to not live in chronic pain because I didn't want to be always having to take medication to not be in pain. And so I found when I was moving my body, motion became the lotion for my body. And I started to feel better. I started to move better. There was just so much that came from that. And so for me, it's all about a healthy mind, a healthy body, a healthy overall being, and being able to show up as the best version of yourself, whatever that kind of looks like.
Thank you, because I think this is crucial. And I think that balance is what people are seeking and sometimes don't even know that what they are hungry for and what they are missing in life is not just, for example, knowledge or just, for example, good body, but all together. And so the only then it becomes probably what you call live your best life. So you mentioned that it started back when you were 19. When you started thinking about it. Yeah, that's very early, and it's admirable. I also pay attention to well-being since I am very, very young. I was very young, and I made lots of mistakes. And because of that, I think it is important for us to hear your opinion, share how you share your body approach exercises, and also what people should avoid. So let's start. Let's start. What applies to any age, first of all, because we have people who watch us that come from every background and every age group. So what applies to everybody?
100%. So I'm going to share my screen here because I really want to share something that I think is really important. So, oops, hold on. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we want. There we go. That's smaller. Can you see this?
Not yet. Let's see.
Hold on. Let's see.
I see myself yet. Okay.
Yourself? Okay.
I see that.
Can you see the screen now? Let's see if I did this right, maybe. Yes? We're doing it right? Okay. So This Iron Body has 6 fundamental principles for life, and we wrote these because we felt that so strongly about the importance of them and how they work through our whole life. So our number 1 is movement. Motion is lotion, moving our body regularly, and that can mean so many different things to so many different people. And we can totally dive into what that looks like. Nourishment, and this is not often when people think of nourishment, they think specifically about the food that they're putting in their body. But when I talk about nourishment, yes, I'm talking about the food. I'm also talking about what is the media that you're consuming? What are you watching on TV? What are you reading? What are you listening to? What else is nourishing your being? And then number 3 is radical unconditional self-love. Often we live in a place of judgment rather than embracing our individuality. And so it's, I think, for a whole life approach to living your best life, having that unconditional self-love is so critical. And so many of us wait until we're further along in our lives to really find that place of self-love. Gratitude. I find gratitude is one of those things that helps ground us into the present moment, but it helps us realize that what we have right now is enough rather than longing for something different. Living in the present moment goes with gratitude because it takes us out of that stress state. It takes us out of worry, and it brings on the ability to feel joy and happiness, and then having a greater purpose. Because when we have a greater purpose, we have a greater sense of what it is that we want to live for. So those are our 6 fundamental principles for life. And I think that they are really critical to helping us truly live our best life.
I'm so glad you brought up gratitude, because people underestimate the importance of looking at their life and appreciating other people, what they have, instead of constantly undermining everything that they actually already have in life. And when we do not appreciate and show gratitude for that, I think we are lacking a lot, and also missing what other people can do for us, what we mean for them. So let's start about start one after another. So let's start from the top.
Totally. So the number 1 was movement. And I always say motion is lotion because, like I already kind of said, for me, motion was what helped my body to feel better. So motion being lotion. So whatever movement is to you, whatever stage of life you're in, whatever your goals might be. So you might have goals to lift weights. Maybe your goal is just to walk. Maybe your goal is to do some stretching or some light movement. Maybe it is gardening, but you got to find something that is movement on a daily basis. I think that is fundamental to keeping our body healthy, and keeping that longevity and that usefulness within our joints. If we don't use that motion, it becomes a little bit more stagnant, and we tend to not be able to take that same level of movement and of flexibility into our life long term.
That is wonderful. And we can see that the comment on the screen, and Candy, you will go next. Lynette Barr says, these 6 points are fantastic. Thank you, Lynette. This is wonderful, and it's true. So Candy has a comment.
And my comment was just that, Kayla, the reason I do exercise, and mine are very easy movements, it makes me feel better. I don't want to exercise necessarily, and I don't enjoy thinking about exercising every day. But I know if I want to feel well and not hurt, if I will do those exercises, I feel better. And they are just simple exercises that I do. And I like to walk, so that's something I can do in addition sometimes. But really, those exercises make me feel better. And so I would encourage people, if you're listening and you're older like me, you don't have to be young like Kayla to feel better by exercising. You can be older. It still works. You are so right. Thank you for sharing that.
I think people underestimate the ability to the endorphins feel when we do get that movement going, right? We just underestimate that we are going to feel better. Lots of people, and I hear this all the time, is I'm just not motivated. I don't have the motivation. And what I always say to people is that action becomes well before motivation. Meaning, you just because, like, I don't wake up in the morning every single morning and they're like 6 a.m. I want to move my body. Like, of course I want to roll over, I want to hit snooze, and I want to sleep a little longer. I think that's human nature. But when I get out of bed and I take that action towards my goals or towards doing something to move my body, it's not until I'm physically in the process of moving it, okay, now I'm ready to do this. Now I want to do this. So sometimes it just means take that action and see what happens. Meet yourself with where you're at each day and just move, whatever that might mean that day.
And I think that's true because your movements, Kayla, I know are not like my movements, and that's okay. There's a pretty good age gap there, but still, just what I think I do is appropriate for someone my age, just like what you do is appropriate for you, I'm sure.
Well, my
And
93-year-old grandmother, she lives at home all by herself still. She still does everything for herself. And she says that she lives with her dogs and that they take her for a walk every day.
Yeah.
And so at 93, she walks 5 kilometers every single day because her dogs take her for a walk. And I think that, you know, it's really health at any age and meeting our bodies where we're at with the ability, like the mobility that we have. So if you don't have a ton of mobility, you know, maybe walking is your thing. Maybe some chair yoga is great for you. And I think that people often get stuck in that thinking that, well, as I age, I just stop doing these activities. And my advice is, as you age, you should do more activities and really, you know, embracing, yes, you might get tired faster. Maybe it's only 10 minutes. Maybe it's 20 minutes here and there, but it doesn't need to be like a solid hour. So meeting yourself each day with what mobility you're willing to do too.
so what I hear, it is first of all very individual, sort of customized, right? Also, how do you decide? It's not the age, obviously, because what I hear between Candy and Kayla, your conversation about, you know, the age, it does not matter because seems like what is appropriate and enough for some people, also maybe not enough for others. And so everybody, like your grandma, her dog takes her for a walk, great. But a question I have, when we talk about what is enough, what is not enough, I remember how about 5-6 years ago, I was so, you talk about endorphins. I found out that strength exercises and also walking, jogging makes me so happy. And also I needed to lose some weight, so I decided I will commit myself to walking 10,000 a day. No, that's what you always Google, find some advices. That's what I think we need coaches. So, and I started walking, remember, Scott, so Scott is my husband. I think he was pulling his hair off because what I was doing to myself, I was exhausting myself, but I was happy. And so every day I walked 10,000 steps in the heat. It was like about 97, 100. And then also every other day I did strength exercises. And then instead of losing weight, I started gaining weight. And because I kept myself at a very low calorie intake. So what is wrong with that picture? What did I do wrong?
Well, that's a can of worms. Where would you like me to start? So, couple things. When we start strength training, it doesn't matter. Like we'll talk about calories in a second, but when we start strength training, we're building muscle, and muscle weighs more than fat. And I think that a lot of people get the idea. It's like, I'm going to start strength training and I'm going to lose fat. And that might take place. We get like body recomposition. Now, fat doesn't turn to muscle, but as we burn the fat, which is energy, our body will start to build more muscle for the demand that we are placing on it. So that is critical. Now, when you are eating in a calorie deficit, you should in fact lose weight, right? We should lose some form of weight. But the problem is that if we're eating too few calories for too long without refeeds, without diet breaks, our metabolism down regulates to that lower amount of calories. And then all of a sudden that becomes your maintenance calories. So before entering on any kind of a weight loss journey, I strongly recommend that you find what maintenance calories is for you. There's some calculations we can do, or you can just do a little bit of trial and error. If you're not gaining or losing any weight with what you're eating right now, then that would be maintenance. And if you want to lose a little bit of weight, then we eat slightly less the maintenance. Every person, it's very individualized in how your thyroid functions with it, how your metabolism adapts. But I think that the missing link for a lot of people is that they assume that they should, eat around that 1,000-calorie mark or that 1,200 calorie mark, and they're going to lose weight. But I'll be honest, like if you often eat at that level, your metabolism will down regulate to that level, and you'll have to eat less and less and less in order to actually be able to lose that weight. Whereas if you were at, say, maintenance calories and you were doing the strength training and the cardiovascular training, you're going to get something that's called body recomposition. And that means that you're going to lose fat, but you're going to build muscle. So that's always like where I like to start people, is in that body recomposition category. And then we can always look at decreasing calories from there, but that way we're not down regulating the metabolism right away. And making sure that you're getting adequate refeeds, adequate diet breaks to prevent that metabolism from down regulating.
So question then I have, what is then metabolism management rate? So how do you define it? You says you need to define what is your metabolism rate, right? Is it how you phrase that?
You want to find your maintenance calories.
Maintenance calories. So how do you find it out?
So when I take on a client, I do a whole calculation. So for me, it's based on your height, your age, your weight, and how physically active you are. Now, I'm going to be 100% honest. I get so many women, especially, that come to me they're like, when I calculate maintenance, let's pretend their maintenance calories is 1,800, but they come to me and they're eating 1,200 calories. And they want me to help them lose weight. I will tell you, if you are eating 1,200 calories and you're not losing weight, then your metabolism has downregulated to that 1,200 calories. So we have to refeed your body, and people underestimate this too. A month, maybe 2 months to refeed your body up to that calculated maintenance in order for that weight loss to really start. I had a client come to me. She was eating 1,000 calories a day. And she's like, I exercise, 5-6 days a week. I don't understand. Why am I not losing weight? I got her up to like almost 2,000 calories a day, almost doubled her calorie intake. And at first she was like, oh my goodness, I can't eat this much. I can't fit this all in my body. And then I told her, I was like, there's going to come a day where you're going to ask me for more calories. And she's like, no, that's never going to happen, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden she's at 2,000 calories. She's like, I'm starving. And I'm like, because your body is no longer in the starvation state. So your body is able to regulate itself better. You have hunger cues. Like one of the biggest things to know if your metabolism is working right is whether you get hunger and satiety cues, right? Do you feel hungry? And then after you eat, do you feel satiated? If that's a little wonky and, you eat and then you feel hungry, or you don't actually ever feel satiated, that is a key indicator that your metabolism might be, a little bit down regulated, and that maybe you need to eat a little bit more.
I love your method. Yes, I love your methodology already, because at least now I understand why live your best life. Because instead of starving ourselves, you tell them, no, you need to eat. And eating is pleasant. So that's already a huge plus. Okay, Candy, you had a question.
I have a sister who always says, I'm just never hungry. I'm just not hungry. I don't really care to eat. And so what is the cause of that? I almost heard an answer in what you already said, but I couldn't quite figure it out, so I'll listen.
Yeah, so there's a couple things with that. So often if we don't have hunger cues, it can be related to your metabolism being downregulated. It could also be that person doesn't, I'm going to say, live their life around food. Okay, so I'm very food focused. I love food. I'm always thinking about when my next meal or snack is. only because I just love it and I love cooking and like all of that. It just engrosses me. But some people are just not that way. And so, do they get hungry? Not really. They kind of eat for the sake of living versus eating for the sake of enjoyment. And I think that that's where the difference is, because some people get that enjoyment factor. They get that, I'm going to say emotional eating, right? Like eating to feel happy, eating to not feel sad. We start to get that emotional component associated with that. And you also get that serotonin burst, right? So like if you're not feeling so happy and you decide that you're going to eat a donut, your brain produces serotonin, which is your feel good hormones. And all of a sudden you feel a little bit better. So and some people already feel good all the time. So that donut's not really going to give them that serotonin burst. So for them to eat their donut, they could do without it. And I think that that's kind of, you have to be very aware of, is this emotional? Am I eating because I'm legitimately hungry? Am I getting that gurgly feeling in my stomach? Or am I eating because, I'm trying to fill some other void?
And it's true that people sometimes eat like under stress, and they're not hungry, honestly. And anybody probably is guilty of that, but not your sister, obviously, Candy. That's amazing. And I think it's a gift in a way. But so since you started talking about serotonin and different products, so could you spend a little time before we go back to your list, all this wonderful features that you mentioned in the beginning. So briefly, could you talk about what then people need to eat to live their best life?
100%. So, I used to be very rigid in what I would recommend for people to eat. And maybe it comes with age, maybe it comes with, I'm going to say wisdom, but I am very much focused on whole foods. Like eating foods as close to their natural state as possible. I get it. It is easy to go to the store and buy a frozen pizza and throw that in the oven, or chicken strips and french fries, throw that in the oven. I get it. I have 3 children. But I think that we sometimes think that that's the easier route, and not realizing that those things are going to take the same amount of time to cook that it might take to cook up some whole foods. And so I'm very much focused on whole foods, or foods as close to their natural state as possible. We want to make sure that our body is getting enough nutrients. When we think about things like, oh, I get cravings, oh, I never really feel totally full, oh, I just want to eat all the chocolate in the house. When our body is feeling cravings, it's because our body is missing something. It's looking for something. And so, if you're feeling that craving with maybe chips and you eat the whole bag of chips and you could probably still eat more, then I ask you, are you filling that void of what your body is actually looking for? Maybe your body is looking for potassium. If you're craving chocolate, your body might be looking for magnesium. So when we start to eat the whole foods, we start to reduce cravings because we're getting enough nutrients from fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, meats. They're vegetarian sources such as tofu or soybeans. So there's lots of different options out there. But I want to say that sometimes we become a little bit stuck in our ways in, I grew up in the 90s and, tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches were the norm for lunch. And while that's not necessarily a terrible option, it's just not something that you want to eat every single day. Maybe, you have tomato soup and grilled cheese one day, then when we look at balance, maybe the next day I'm going to have, a chicken Caesar salad or something else that I enjoy that has a little bit more nutrient density to it.
That's very helpful. So thank you. I think it's, especially when you mentioned the 90s, many people probably like, yeah, I ate that. So whole food and less of the food that is either fast food or you buy the frozen like pizza or get pizza. So yeah, pizza is, though some people say, oh, this is everything there, all nutrients. But yes. But so let's go back to your list. And Kayla, if you could please put it back on the screen and maybe expand a little. So I will remove myself and then we will go to the screen I will see your screen showing up, because I think that will be very good for people to follow your list.
For sure. Give me 2 seconds. Let's go.
I think it's a very comprehensive approach, and since our audience, people like Lynette, like that, so let's put it back, and I will.
Fabulous. Okay, so number 1 we talked about was movement. Number 2 is nourishment. Now, I think that we've already been discussing nourishment when it comes to nourishing our body with whole foods, right? We just dived into that and we got really deep into that. I also want to talk about nourishing our body with what we're consuming. So our body is made 80% of water. And if you haven't had the opportunity to do so, I highly recommend you look at Dr. Emoto's water experiment. You can Google it if you've never done it. There is a YouTube video. But being that our body is 80% water, what we consume, how we talk to our body, how other people talk to us, what we listen to, what we watch on television, what we read, all of this impacts our body on a molecular level. And so we really want to start nourishing our body with things that uplift us, that empower us, that make us feel better. And so creating that environment that really nourishes your whole being, makes you feel good. I mean, at the end of the day, when you watch the news and it's always negative, you don't usually come away from that feeling excited about the rest of your life. So if that's not going to uplift and empower you, maybe it's not necessarily something that you want to consume on a regular basis. Maybe instead you want to start reading something that helps you learn something, or that you get lost in a book and in a story that kind of makes you feel whimsical. There's different ways to start nourishing our body in that respect. And then number 3, so radical, unconditional self-love. And I think we underestimate the value of self-love and where we place that self-love. I know for myself, many years I have spent looking for that acceptance and that love externally, right? I'll do things in order for somebody to validate it, for somebody to look at me and go, yeah, you're accepted. But I promise you, it doesn't matter how much you look for that externally. Nobody's going to walk up to you, shake your hand and say, welcome to the world of people that have been totally accepted. It's like, that acceptance, that love, that comes from deep, deep inside. And I know it sounds cliche, and people say you got to love yourself first and all of that kind of stuff. But I want to say you got to love yourself first, and you've got to put yourself first. That self-love, that acceptance, whatever it is that you're looking for externally, that validation, that comes from inside. And that comes from the story that you're telling yourself. What is the narrative that you're telling yourself? Think of it like this. If you walk past a mirror, what do you often hear yourself say to yourself? Is it positive? Is it negative? What is the self-talk like? When you start a new activity, what do you often say to yourself? Do you tell yourself that you can do it? Do you tell yourself you can't do it? We have these things that are called limiting beliefs, and our limiting beliefs either empower us into doing something or they disempower us. And more often than not, our limiting beliefs disempower us. They tell us we can't do something or we aren't something. So let's pretend your limiting belief is I am not enough. When we have a limiting belief like that, then you usually have at least 4 reasons that say, that hold up that belief. I call it like your belief is your tabletop. And so if you knock out one of those reasons that blocks it, then the table will still stand. If I knock out 2 reasons, then the table is way less likely to stand. So whatever that limiting belief is that's preventing you from stepping into a better version of yourself, from loving yourself, from empowering yourself to try something new, to step outside that comfort zone, I encourage you to look at what are the 4 reasons that you're giving yourself that you can't do it. Because when you start knocking those down, then we can start stepping into a better version of ourselves. We can start showing up as the version of ourselves that we want to, right? So when we knock out those legs, it might feel uncomfortable to take a statement from I am not enough to I am enough. But maybe Instead, you action orientate that statement and you go, I'm working towards being enough. I'm working towards loving myself a little bit more, whatever that is. But if it's action orientated, then it doesn't sit as uncomfortably in your body, because when you say I am enough, your body feels that as, I've hit this state. And if you don't feel that you've hit that state, it feels like you're kind of lying to yourself. Whereas if you give yourself an action orientated statement, like I am working towards this, then it doesn't feel like a lie, because maybe you are working towards it. Maybe you're slowly. It doesn't matter whether you're going quickly or slowly. You might be just slowly plodding along and working towards loving yourself and accepting yourself at your core.
Go first, Scott, and I'll go right after.
Kayla, I remember something my dad used to say a really long time ago, and I cannot place what the source of this was. It was not original with him, but something like, every day in every way, I'm getting a little bit better. Is that kind of consonant with what you just said?
100%. So what my husband and I always say when we're coaching clients is we're always looking for 1% better. I'm not asking you to clean up your entire diet. I'm not asking you to, change everything that you're doing to move your body. I'm not asking you to unconditionally love yourself wholly today. I'm asking you to strive for 1% better. So what does 1% better mean? Maybe 1% better means that I choose the apple instead of the chocolate bar. Maybe 1% better means that I choose to give myself a smile when I walk past a mirror rather than a critique. Maybe 1% better means I just simply show up and be in the present moment rather than playing on my cell phone while I'm having a conversation with someone. 1% better can mean totally different. But I'll tell you this much. If you do 1% better for 30 days, for 1 month, that's 30% better. You're still 30% further ahead. And if you keep doing that and doing that and doing that, can you imagine in a year where you would be if you were 1% better every day? Right.
The thing that I was thinking is that most people are way too hard on themselves. And I never beat myself up. My self-talk is pretty encouraging. And I wonder, Kayla, do you think I can be too kind to myself and say, Candy, stop that? Be a little tougher on yourself because you are way too easy on yourself. Is that a possibility, or can you go there? I don't know. I really don't.
No, I think that loving yourself unconditionally can look so different from each person, but I 100% agree. I think we are our own worst critics. We are the hardest on ourselves, and we set our expectations really high. I always say to my husband, if you just lowered your expectations, you'd be a lot happier, because when we give ourselves these expectations, then we feel that we can't always achieve them, or when you do achieve them, you don't spend enough time celebrating the achievement there. And you got to think about it from a neurological perspective. Our inner critic is there for your life preservation. Okay. You can't get rid of your inner critic. You don't hit a point in your life where that critic completely goes away. But we talk about it in regards to which wolf do you feed? Are you feeding the wolf that is empowering you, that is lifting you up, or are you feeding the one that is pulling you down, right? We have both of these wolves inside of us at any given time. So you've got to decide which one you're going to give the power to. And that doesn't mean that the uplifting wolf always gets the power, but which one are you feeding most of the time, and starting to come at it from that perspective, because our inner critic is meant to keep us alive, and it also is meant to keep us stuck. Nobody has ever judged themselves into greatness, into this amazing being, So looking at it, practicing a little bit of grace when it comes to that, we talk about it in regards to self-compassion, right? Self-compassion has 3 components to it. Kindness, so practicing that kindness to yourself. Okay, mindfulness being the awareness without judgment. So being the observer looking in versus the inner critic on the inside. And then the third thing is common humanity, knowing that you're not alone, that you are not the only one going through this. When I feel pain, it's the same thing as you feeling pain. Although our degree of pain might be different, what it is that we're feeling pain over is going to be different. But the fact that we are both human, we all feel pain, that is really the component, and to understand that part of the human experience is suffering, and that we are all suffering together. It's not that you are at home by yourself suffering alone. We all suffer together. We all experience it at some point in your life. You're not stuck there forever, and that it is going to get better. And that's where that kindness comes in. That's where that practicing some grace, practicing some mindfulness, and observing it from maybe another perspective can really come in to help us step into that power that lives inside of us, to start feeding that positive, uplifting wolf.
I really like now more and more the title, because live your best life, and now you put next to that, life is about suffering, and that is kind of a paradox, but it is so much true. And I think since you talked about limited belief, I think it's also coming out of that expectation that life is all rosy and no pain. But also, like, the saying is no pain, no gain when it applies to fitness. So, and also I think it applies to our spiritual fitness. And when you talked about limited belief, I was honestly surprised and happy to hear that, because again, it does not matter how old people are. They can be 18 having limited belief that kind of makes them disabled, handicap, and also people can be already 85 and unfortunately living their whole life with that limited belief, not trying, because many things just simply made them not able to do things that they needed. But so let's talk about it now. Like, for example, limited belief, and that loving yourself, that really supports your idea, live your best life. So
Yeah.
yes, and gratitude. So are you saying that practicing gratitude applies to an individual as well? Like, I can be grateful to myself? Is that what you say?
100%.
Oh, wow.
Practicing gratitude is one of those things that it brings more happiness and joy into your life. And the more we focus on the good in our life, the more we bring more good into our life, right? We live in this society where, you watch an ad, and the ad says, oh, if you don't have this moisturizer, your skin isn't good enough, it's not shiny enough, whatever. And I think that we need to start going, no, what I have right now is enough. What I have is more than enough, because some of the happiest people on this earth don't have all of the things and stuff that we have. And I think that we get lost in that I need things and stuff to feel happy. But I always say that happiness is a fleeting moment. You have to be in the present moment to witness happiness, because it comes and it's gone. But joy is that lasting feeling. When you are surrounded with other people and you're feeling that joy, that is something that we can share with everyone. Happiness comes and goes. And so it's like, oh, your kid got an A+ on their exam, you give them a high five, we all feel happy. That moment has now passed. We move on to the next thing, right?
Right.
But joy, it's like, we're going to celebrate now that, it's your birthday, we're celebrating. That's not happiness. Happiness is that moment of maybe blowing out the candle or ripping open the present for the first time. But the joy is that entire space. And I think that that's where the gratitude fills in, is that gratitude fills in the joy. It brings us to the present moment, and it says that everything that I have right now is enough, and I am enough, and that I am grateful. And I have a rule in our house. So we sit around the dinner table and we go around and we say something that you're grateful for. You can say one thing, you can say 10 things. The only rule is that you cannot say the same thing. So in my house, I have a rule for myself. I must say 10 things, and I cannot say the same thing twice in a row in like the week. So it gets really difficult because by the end of the week, you were looking for something completely different. So you're like, I'm grateful I saw the deer today. I'm grateful the bluebird was eating from my compost. I'm grateful that I, have breath in my lungs, and finding those small things that we often take for granted, that really start to ground us back into the present moment and ground us back into our bodies and into our beings.
You're so right, because that was a research that supports what you just said about happiness and joy. Because people are much happier, and which is more, they have more joy and experience more joy in their life, not in America. But people who live in the third world countries, surprisingly, who don't have enough, but what they do have is a sense of community that you talked about. And they also know how to enjoy the sunshine and that very air that they have in their lungs. Thank you for bringing it up. So you can be grateful to yourself. And the happiness, yes, it is fleeting. So let's move on your list. This is just getting more and more interesting.
So we've done movement, nourishment, radical unconditional self-love, and gratitude. And now we're going to move into living in the present moment. And this is a critical component to living your best life, because I think that most of us, we live in the rat race of life, right? Stress, anxiety, worry, depression. I mean, these are terms that we throw out as blanket terms. The amount of people on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication today is more than ever in history. And we wonder, well, why? Well, that's because we're constantly looking in the future and in the past, right? Stress doesn't live in the present moment. Stress lives in the past and the future. So if we start to ground ourselves in the present moment, we start to be present in our body, be present in the space that we are in, that's actually where we can start to let go of that stress, that anxiety, that worry, the depression. It all kind of floats away. I mean, I myself, I struggled with depression for many, many years. I was on antidepressants, and it took me years to get off of them. But half of that was bringing my awareness back to my breath. My breath lives in the present moment. You can't breathe in the future, and you can't breathe in the past. So when we bring our awareness back to our breath, it has that strong component going, I'm okay right here, right now. When you start to feel anxious, can you feel your lungs? Can you feel the motion that breath is traveling in your body? Okay, I'm okay right now. I've got this. I can move forward. I'm not worried about, the test down the road. I'm not worried about what took place yesterday. I'm here. And I think that, you don't always have to be in the present moment, but pausing a couple minutes every single day will drastically reduce your stress. It will drastically re-regulate your nervous system. In our body, we have our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous system. And so think of your sympathetic nervous system as your fight or flight nervous system, your stress response. And then your parasympathetic is your rest and digest, your relaxation response. You can only yawn if you are in a parasympathetic state. So that's something to think about. So if you can yawn, you know that you're relaxed and you're not stressed out. So that's kind of nice. But we need to start to come out of that stress state from time to time to develop the resilience that our body needs for our body to have that long lasting health. Because being in a sympathetic or a stressed out state for too long can start to bring on what I'm going to call dis-ease in our body, not disease, because that is the long-term effect of dis-ease in our body. But having dis-ease in our body, if you start to have an ailment and you don't know where it came from, I challenge you to start to look at your stress levels. I challenge you to start to look at your thoughts, what's going on. Because if we are feeling, oh, my knee is aching, but I never actually did anything to my knee, well, maybe your knee is aching because of the stress in your body, because of the inflammation that long-term stress causes in our body. I mean, there's tons of research. If you have the opportunity to watch the video on YouTube, I think it is now, it's called Portrait of a Killer, and it's all about It's a scientific study that they did about long-term effects of stress. And in it, they talk about how stress actually changes your DNA. It shortens your telomere length, which is directly correlated with how long you're going to live. And we in today's society, in Western society altogether, we often live this busy, stressed out life. I mean, how many people have you said, oh, hey, how's it going? What have you been up to? Oh, I've just been so busy. You know, it's an easy blanket term to use, but when we get trapped in that busyness and that stress, we actually start to shorten our life. We start to create dis-ease in our body and cause ailments, aches, pains, all that kind of stuff. And then you start to cause that inflammation, and that inflammatory response in our body has long-lasting effects. And we can see the effects from digestive health, from brain health. There's just so much that kind of comes into it. So when we begin to take ourselves out of that, once a day, even for a couple moments, into the present moment, grounding ourselves in the breath, just feeling, like I like to link it through your five senses. What can I see, smell, hear, taste, and feel? Can I feel my fingertips on the inside of each other? Grounding ourselves even outside in nature, going for a walk outdoors. These are all great things to help us be more present in the moment.
I was reminded of a little sketch from Winnie the Pooh. And Pooh asks Piglet, what day is it? And Piglet says, it's today. And Pooh responds, oh, my favorite day.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's so important. I mean, I think too, in today's society, we live so often behind the screen of a cell phone, right? I mean, if you go to your kid's event, everybody's got their phone up and they're taking pictures. But I challenge you, how often are you going to look at those pictures or the video that you just took? What if for 2 seconds you put it down and you enjoyed the moment? Like, listen, what does the crowd sound like? What does your kid's face look like? You're starting to pay attention to these small, finite details grounds you into that present moment, and then you find joy. You don't find joy outside the present moment because it only exists here and now. And so you hear these people that are, oh, I'm very rarely happy. I don't have these feelings. Well, how often do you pause to be present?
Interesting that I want to stop a little on the subject of stress, but before that, the phone. I found out it's very paradoxical, and until one day I saw an article about how people saw, let's say, Queen Elizabeth, and everybody had cameras. And the author asked a simple question. Why do you look at somebody you'll never seen before and never will see through the camera, through the lenses, rather than putting it away and looking with your own eyes? That's priceless. So that article made me think about how often I grab my phone to take pictures and videos, and I am probably one of the guiltiest person because I feel like, oh, I'm a reporter, I'm a journalist. But the truth is, some people hide behind cameras because that's a huge screen, and it's a huge protector, and also protects us from having a conversation, and also increases stress. We think our cameras and phones help us to reduce stress, but it's quite opposite. So let's go back to stress, because that's a huge factor. And what I heard, Kayla, surprised me, because we all know about inflammation and we all know about aches and pains. And what I hear is that what if your knees ache, or your back, or your head, not because you over-exercised or have some organic problems, physical problems, but because you are under stress and your body is inflamed. Let's spend a little more time on inflammation, how to reduce that.
So, I mean, well, the very first thing I'm telling you to reduce inflammation in your body is reduce your overall stress.
Okay.
So building that resiliency, right? And so when we look at building that resiliency, it means that we come out of that stress state from time to time. finding enjoyment in life. So when you are going to do physical activity, where is the enjoyment there? Are you doing Zumba because it brings fun to you? Or are you, going through the motions of lifting weights at the gym and it's not fun to you, but you feel like you have to do it? Is it another chore, right? Taking ourselves into these states of stress is important, right? Physical activity is stress on our body, but when we come out of it, we de-stress. So something like yoga, a mindfulness practice, and often people will link mindfulness to meditation. Sure, you could link them, but they are, what I like to think is that they are separate. So think of a mindfulness practice like this, okay? This is one of my favorite analogies, like a fishbowl. So if you close your eyes and you find your breath and you're breathing in and out equally through your nose, not worrying about forcing that air. And as you're breathing, you're noticing waves in your mind, and you can notice the waves of the ocean. And in the ocean, you see the seaweed, and maybe you see a fish or two, but it feels really murky. But with each breath, you begin to make the water a little bit more clear. A little bit more clear. And as you're breathing, the water becomes clearer and clearer. If we start to lose that clearness, we just bring that awareness back to our breath, feeling the waves of the ocean and noticing that fishbowl becomes clearer and clearer. No longer can we see the seaweed. It's just the clear ocean water. We can feel the waves of the ocean. We can notice our breath, but we are present. There's no thought that comes through our mind. It is just the awareness of our breath and of the waves in this clear, clear ocean. When you open your eyes, you feel a little bit more centered, a little bit more grounded. That's mindfulness, because we're not focused on an end goal. We're focused on that clear mind state. And so I like the fishbowl experiment because we can all visualize the waves on the ocean. We can visualize clearing that murky water and it becomes clear, but there's nothing now there. We can really begin to see that, and that becomes tangible for our brain. You can go into meditation, and meditation is great and has so many benefits, but it's not for everyone. And so that's where I always bring it back to your 5 senses, something that you can see, smell, hear, taste, and feel. Maybe mindfulness for you is going for a walk and noticing your feet underneath your body, noticing the sounds around you and the smells around you. Maybe mindfulness for you is spending time just in your breath and in your body. Maybe mindfulness for you is journaling. So there's so many of these mindfulness techniques that we can use. Maybe it's just pouring yourself a cup of tea and stirring in some honey and being very mindful and aware of what it feels like to stir the honey in your tea. We can start to bring these things into our everyday lives and into the things that we regularly do. And this is going to ground us back into that present moment and take us out of that place of stress.
Thank you, because that also reminded me when you mentioned the word resilience. Usually people understand resilience as pushing through. Mm-hmm. And that's related closely to the stress you mentioned. So you're kind of putting more stress on ourselves. But resilience is actually not folding under stress. So having this ability to always get up when life puts you down. So, and I think that's all these previous items that you discuss, Kayla, are perfectly feeding into that ability not to fold under stress, but not to push through, but with mindfulness, with walking, with exercise, even having a cup of tea with honey. It's all helping us in the difficult moment to have some kind of reserve. Am I right?
Yeah, it's all about knowing that we all have our personal power inside of us at any time, and that power lives in us, and that we have that ability to draw from it. And I think that that's where resilience comes from, right? When we look at, like we were already talking about self-compassion, the opposite of that is that self-pity, that I'm all alone, that I'm doing this by myself, and poor me, poor me, poor me. And when we have that mentality, we feel powerless. But to feel an emotion, to feel in a state, that we need to start to look at the terminology. I feel sad is a hell of a lot different than I am sad. And really looking at that of like feeling an emotion versus becoming an emotion and empowering yourself forward. We don't always have good days. So I feel an emotion, sure, but that doesn't mean that I will never feel a different emotion. And I think that when we resonate with it as I am something, it owns it. I'm never going to be anything different than this way. So I feel this way lends way to that building that resiliency. We don't grow and learn from our successes. We grow and learn from our failures, from every time we fall. That's where we pick ourselves up and move forward. And that's how we build that resiliency over time. It's like, I know that I'm going to be able to do this next time, or I'm going to try a little harder next time. I'm going to change my approach next time, or maybe this thing's not for me, but these other things are for me. And that's where we learn about ourselves. That's where we grow as individuals. And that's really where we build that resiliency.
That is awesome. So, any questions at this point before you talk about purpose, right? So,
Do you guys
yeah.
have any questions?
That is very, very helpful. And I know that our audience, of course, many people watch us tonight, but also they watch during the week on YouTube, on TikTok, and on Facebook. So I appreciate everybody who watches us today. And it's so much to process, but the richness of your experience and how you approach that topic, live your best life. So everybody has a potential and promise to have a best life. Sometimes we just waste it on our self-pityness and on stresses, on living this hurried life and losing the center, the core. So please continue, because this is a topic that is just exactly, I think, what people need to hear.
Yeah, so having a greater purpose is one of the things that they've been able to link to longevity. So that long lasting life, that meaningful life. And I bring up like Alfred Noble. So Alfred Noble is the guy that invented the Nobel Peace Prize. But before he did that, he had a case of mistaken identity. So his brother had passed away, and a reporter had written a eulogy about him, not about his brother. And it had said, Alfred Noble, and that he had passed away, and that he had essentially left his mark on humanity by inventing dynamite, and how he had killed millions of people in the wars. And he was reading this eulogy about himself, essentially, and he was like, oh my goodness, I don't want this to be how I leave this world. And he took that and he empowered himself forward, and he said, no, I'm going to invent the Nobel Peace Prize. And from there it grew and it grew and it grew, and it became this big thing for society and for the world. And when he did eventually pass, he wasn't known for inventing dynamite. He was known for the Nobel Peace Prize. And I think that so many of us get to the end of our lives and we look back on it and go, well, what did I do? What was my purpose in life? And so we don't always take a look at it from the end and really become the architects of our lives and begin to build it forward. So I encourage you to have that greater purpose, to look at your life now and to go, what do I want to be known for? What do I want to be remembered for? And it doesn't have to be anything grand like inventing the Nobel Peace Prize. Maybe you want to be known for being the best parent. Maybe you want to be known for, always showing up in your grandchildren's lives. Maybe you want to be known for, the best chocolate cake in town, whatever that is. But when you have that greater purpose, it really gives you the drive. It makes you want to get out of bed in the morning. It makes you want to show up as a better version of yourself, because we put all these parameters on ourselves about how we should live, and we just start shoulding, versus what is it that I want to do? Because you are the architect of your life. You get to choose what your life looks like, what it feels like. And I think that we often feel like sometimes our lives are predetermined for us, but The answer to that is it's not predetermined. We choose to stay stuck in our old ways, in our old patterns, in our limiting beliefs, in the stories that we're telling ourselves. We can choose differently. We can choose instead that, you know what, maybe I'd never liked, bell peppers, and I'm going to choose that I'm going to try and start to like bell peppers. And if I eat them every day for the next while, maybe I will like them. So that you do have that opportunity. Life is opportunity. And so when we have that greater purpose, we know that we have that opportunity to live our best lives, to choose to be different, to not be stuck in these old patterns and old ways.
And that reminded me of your grandmother. The purpose, to have a greater purpose, that not necessarily a Nobel Prize, but something that was probably moving her since she is now 93, and you connected longevity with the purpose in life. So what is your grandmother's secret?
The longevity?
Yes.
So she swears vitamin C. She says vitamin C and joy, finding that joy, being part of the whole human experience, right? Being part of community, having those conversations and being present in those conversations, and then moving. And so that's when we created our Iron Body 6 fundamental principles for life. Like, we created these because we feel that this is what is going to help you get that longevity, to really find that enjoyment in life, and to really take back that personal power and know that you can choose to live any life that you want.
And it's so true. The purpose, and also your grandmother's illustration, because you're very young, and of course people will say, "Oh, sure, you have all the capacity to move and be the Iron Body lady," but your grandmother, and you have the same genes. So, but the fact that she walks 10 kilometers, which is, for people to understand how many miles, it's 5 miles. It's a huge distance for a 93-year-old woman. And the fact that she has her companion, the dog, and they have this fellowship. So I think that's another illustration that the joy is based on having a relationship, and it does not have to be necessarily in the moment a human being, a pet, a dog, a cat, but doing something for others, and also to have the joy. So please, in conclusion, help us to kind of focus now. Help us to get that purpose, that tomorrow, maybe even tonight, everybody gets away from computers and screens and takes a walk, or remembers that, oh, we have a dog and I did not take it out for a while because of the snow. So please give us kind of some motivation to do something right away, and then also continue it into tomorrow.
So the very first thing that I'm going to say is start to take action. Take action today, whatever that action might be for you. Maybe it's an extra cup of water in the morning. Maybe it's moving your body. Maybe your action that you're taking is you're chopping up a new vegetable that you've never tried before, and you're going on the internet to figure out how to cook it. But taking that action is going to be the very, very first thing, because over time, that action begins to snowball. You start to build another action, and that becomes that 1% better. That becomes just slightly better than I was yesterday. I'm not asking myself to totally show up as this, enlightened beings, for lack of a better way of saying it, but I'm asking you to show up as 1% better. And every day, 1% better. I can do a little bit better today. I can do a little bit better today. And allowing yourself that grace of that clean slate. You know what? If yesterday wasn't the best day, that's okay. We wipe the slate clean. We wake up the next day. It's a new day. It's a new beginning. It's a new opportunity. And starting to look at life as an opportunity. Starting to feed that wolf that uplifts and empowers you, that brings you gratitude and joy and all of those feel-good feelings, and living for that, and then noticing how that begins to show up more and more and more in your life, rather than these other tendencies that we tend to go down, these rabbit holes that we can get stuck in, especially with media these days. Start to, maybe distance yourself from things that are no longer serving you, things that aren't lifting you up. If you notice being on social media isn't making you feel good about yourself, maybe take a little hiatus. If you're noticing that, every time I eat these French fries, they may give me a stomach ache, maybe take a little hiatus. But starting to notice the things that make you feel good and building on that.
I caught you saying get better by 1% a day. And I thought, wow, does it mean that in 365 days, it will be 365% increase? And I thought, wow, that's quite a growth. So I think that's the best advice we could get today. Don't you think, Andy and Scott? Because that supports your theme today. The podcast was titled Live Your Best Life. And I think increasing by such a small fraction, by 1%, it could take us to 365% in a year. And again, since you told us to be kind to ourselves, maybe not every day. Maybe even if we have an increase by 50%, as you said in the beginning, it's a great growth. Thank you so much, Kayla. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for your energy, for your smile, for this inspiration. You empowered us today, don't you think, Andy and Scott?
Thank you so much. It was a blessing to have you here. Thank you so much.
It was. And thank you for showing us the connection between our emotional, spiritual life and our physical being. Thank you. God bless you. Have a great week. And I think we should invite you back to share with us how you, the mother of 3 children, can be that youthful and energetic and talk about what other people need to improve in their lives. Thank you. I hope we can have you back in our studio. Have a wonderful day.
100%. Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
Thank you.
Good to have you.